Hey everyone, David here with my review of the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. entitled The Dirty Half Dozen, and this is one of the most important episodes of this second season for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Just like last year, there was that set of episodes that was very important because of Captain America the Winter Soldier. Marvel's pushing this episode to be a big one because this is the episode leading up to the release, or at least the US release, of Age of Ultron, Avengers Age of Ultron. And the cast, they keep going on Twitter saying it's all it's all connected. And for a while I was a little disappointed because aside from a brief mentioning of the twins and the resemblance of the cells that Lincoln and Deathlock are being held in, that resemble an awful lot like the cells that the twins were being held in that end credit scene of Captain America the Winter Soldier, there was no big connection to Age of Ultron, at least for a while. I'll get to the ending of this episode in a second. But the majority of this episode, as well as its title, deals with the reunion of the original group of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with Coulson, Ward, May, Simmons, Fitz, and Skye going into this Hydra complex in order to extract Lincoln and Deathlock and get them back and make sure that they're okay, and once they are taken out, bomb the place, and that's just one more move against Hydra. Now the first half, or maybe the first third of this episode or so, deals with two certain factions trying to figure out whether or not they should go in there in the first place. You got Gonzalez and Coulson trying to hatch a plan to make things work, and also I forgot to mention in my last review that Coulson actually, in that little ending scene at the end of the last week's episode, Coulson gave himself up to Bobby and Mack at the end of that episode and surrendered himself and in a way to explain his plan to Gonzalez. And you also got Skye, her mother, and Gordon trying to figure out whether or not it's a wise idea to have Skye be sent back to S.H.I.E.L.D. and Coulson's team to be able to get this mission underway. And ultimately the two blend together to form the Dirty Half Dozen that will go in and get this job done. And that first half of the episode had some good moments, but overall it's just characters talking to one another, trying to deal with things, trying to get over some stuff, especially when you bring back Ward into this mix. You're obviously going to have that stink eye from May. Ward himself even brings Agent 33 and decides to have her be interned back into S.H.I.E.L.D. because he feels like that's where she belongs. And even by the end of the episode, he ends up leaving her there. And it's a little bit tragic because you could see in Agent 33's eyes that she's in love, but Ward, we know Ward. And it was cool to have that scene that was a definite throwback to having Ward discussing the mission and everyone's just looking at him. It did bring me back memories of Season 1, but at the same time I was getting a little bit worried because it was in this scene where Ward was being painted as a good guy, and I'm like, I like my Ward to be a villain. And it was kind of neat that it's almost like the rest of the characters felt the same way I did, and they were like, nah, we're not buying into your bullshit by the end of that season, and they kind of wrapped it up quickly, and I'm like, okay, thank God. And by the end of the episode, he ends up taking off, becoming, like he said it, an independent contractor, where he doesn't work for Hydra, but he doesn't work for S.H.I.E.L.D., and he's going to do whatever it is that he deems necessary to get the job done, whether it be a homicidal act or some kind of heroic act. He's going to have to do whatever needs to get done to get the mission done. And that's essentially what the mantle that Ward has taken. And it looks like his job has been fulfilled for Season 2. I really do not imagine seeing Ward for the remainder of the season. But I liked where we ended with Ward. I was getting kind of worried that he was going to be redeemed in some fashion because I don't like that. I like Ward to stay a villain, and it looks like he's staying a villain, but not so much as he was when he was with Hydra. When he was with Hydra, he was scary. Now, he's just this jerk, really. I preferred for him to be a full-on villain, but at least he wasn't a full-on good guy. I mentioned that in this first half there were some scenes of characters talking to one another, trying to resolve things. One of those scenes was Hunter finally talking to Mack after all this time, and basically just letting bygones be bygones, and it looks like they have made amends and they're going to be fine from here on out. And that's cool because I always liked the dynamic between Hunter and Mack, so it's cool that they are mending that back together. Now, like Mack stated, Hunter hasn't talked to Bobby yet, so I'm interested to see how that's going to play out. But for now, I'm liking that things are starting to blend together because both of these shields, so to speak, have something in common. But if the ending is any indication, it looks like we're gonna have another split that could potentially lead to some kind of civil war. But also in this first half, we see a character take a really drastic measure that honestly really bothered me. In fact, it was the one thing that I did not like about this episode whatsoever. And I've seen other reviewers criticize this about this character in previous episodes, but it never really bothered me. I looked at it and I'm like, oh no, it's just, to me it didn't really bother me. It felt a little bit normal for the character, but honestly I think this was a tad bit too far. And that was Simmons making the conscious decision to want to off Ward. Just looking at Ward and saying, you know what? No, you deserve to die. Here. Bleh. I was like, what the hell, Simmons? Seriously? Just out of nowhere, you're gonna be like, no, I'm gonna take a human life. I'm gonna become Ward. Out of nowhere, okay? The moments that others were having problems with Simmons making these really exaggerated decisions were in the episodes where Sky has been recently transformed. It was the first batch of episodes after the mid-season break, and Simmons was taking these measures to make sure that the thing that affected Sky wasn't going to affect everyone else, and she was acting almost like a germaphobe, but just a much more extreme germaphobe because they're dealing with alien technology, alien type of stuff. And I looked at that as simply just a character that, like I said, was practically a germaphobe, had some kind of OCD, and I'm like, that for some reason doesn't bother me. It could become a complication for our characters, but I see that more as an opportunity for drama. I was like, that didn't really bother me. This bothered me for some reason. Simmons going that extra mile to fulfill her promise back when Ward actually betrayed them and turned to Hydra. I don't know. It just felt too much for me. I just felt like Simmons was taking things way too far in a very unrealistic manner, because to make the decision to take somebody's life, it requires some good character development and some good thinking into how that character is going to think about all this. And it just felt very much on the dime for Simmons in this episode. And ultimately it did lead to the death of a character, Bakshi. Bakshi is no longer part of the whole picture here, and that's because of Simmons wanting to kill Ward. And I don't know, I just can't fathom Simmons wanting to kill Ward, and again that resulted in Bakshi being killed off, and I feel like Bakshi deserved a better death than that. It just felt like a henchman getting killed. But this is Bakshi. He has been around for some time, so I was hoping that he was gonna get at least a flashier death. I'm not expecting a very sentimental death, because Bakshi was not supposed to be that much of a sentimental character. But I was hoping for a flashier death scene for him, because he always appealed to me like that secondary villain. You got the main villain, and then you got that secondary villain that gets almost an even bigger death than the main villain. And I think the Indiana Jones movies have always set that example. Like, that henchman would always get that gruesome death, and then the main villain would get a much subtler death. Yeah, I don't know. I felt like that should have been the template for Bakshi's death in this episode. But Sky ultimately joins the team. They go in and they manage to extract Deathlock and Lincoln out of the compound, and it has been destroyed off camera. Now, a couple of interesting things to note about this entire sequence of the team going in there, performing ultimately a SEAL Team 6 up in there, and getting out. A couple of interesting things. One, visual effects looked rather nice for a TV show, especially with the bombing of the bus. Although the bus is gone. Oh, so many memories on that. But at least they had that throwback scene of Ward and the rest of the team gathering around the table, going over the plan. It was kind of neat, and it did bring back memories of Season 1. So it was a little bit of a bittersweet moment, except more bitter than sweet, to see the bus blow up. I was like, no, the bus is blown up. But some rather cool, neat visual effects for a TV show. And other interesting things were Sky using her powers within the complex and showing us that, she has been harnessing her powers. I just feel like maybe we should have seen her train a little bit more. We only saw her do those couple of exercises with Jay. God, I'm still butchering her name, but her mother. All right, she had those scenes where she was training with her, but I feel like we could have seen a little bit more of her honing her powers before she was able to simply just knock those guys back within this mission. It was cool to see, but it would have been a little bit more believable if we have seen her train just a bit more. And then we had that shot that I think everybody's going to be talking about, that one tracking shot of her going in there, shooting all those guys, leading up to reviving Lincoln. Now, it was cool. It was a cool shot, but there was only one thing that I was thinking of during that entire shot. Kingsman: The Secret Service. I felt like the director has just recently seen that movie and they're like, oh my god, I gotta do that on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Alright, there's a scene in that movie that takes place in a church that's made to look like it's all one shot, or at least 3 separate long takes, because there's a couple of interruptions within that scene, but it was made to look like it was all one shot, a one-shot action sequence, and it looked like he was trying to replicate that in this shot during this particular sequence in the episode, and it looked cool, but it didn't look as polished, obviously, because this isn't a Hollywood production. It's alright, it's made for TV, so it's not gonna look 100% pretty, but I felt like they pulled off a pretty good job. But you were watching Kingsman. I know for a fact you just watched Kingsman, don't lie. Now, let's talk about that ending, alright? It was up until this point where I was feeling a little disappointed that the only connection to the Avengers universe was that little mentioning of the twins, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and again, how much those cells that Deathlock and Lincoln were being held in resembled the cells that twins were being held in Captain America the Winter Soldier at the very end. But then the ending happened. It turns out that there was a file that Coulson was extracting from the Hydra base, and it turns out that this file is the thing that Robert Gonzalez has in his, his little, that was his big secret. That was the thing that he had in his cargo ship. Loki's scepter, which is revealed to be able to control minds, which we saw a bit of in Avengers, in the first Avengers movie. And this is what prompts Coulson to perform Theta Protocol. This whole time we were like, what's Theta Protocol? What is it? What is it? Time to bring in the Avengers. And simultaneously, Coulson not only, like he says, spoiler alert, reveals that maybe Nick Fury is going to be appearing by the end of the season because of the activation of the box, but he takes in this video call by Maria Hill, played by Colby Smulders. And it looks like this whole time they were in cahoots with one another, and Maria is having some sort of larger role happening during the events, or what's going to be the events of Avengers Age of Ultron. Now, what exactly does this mean? Time to bring in the Avengers. I don't know if it's even going to be possible that all 4 Avengers, or at least a fraction of the Avengers, are going to appear on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, recently there was that segment on Jimmy Kimmel where they were taking questions from Skype callers, and one of those Skype callers was Clark Gregg, and he surprised the Age of Ultron cast, and they were like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" Who knows? Maybe that scene after that show, they actually talk to one another, and we might actually see the Avengers on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that would be awesome. But there's these things called paychecks, and because of them, I just don't see that happening. Now, I should note that I'm not saying that Gonzalez has the Loki scepter in his possession at the moment. No, we know that Von Strucker is the one who has the scepter. We saw that in the Captain America the Winter Soldier scene, but that's what they took from his cargo ship during those flashbacks that we saw in that other episode where Bobby and Mack and Rodriguez were trying to hold off the ship, and they tried their best, but I don't think I'm trying to remember if they were able to take the ship. I think they said that they were able to take the ship, but I can't remember if they made up with the cargo. Anyways, all I know is that Von Strucker is in possession of the scepter, and with that, he's able to control minds. And maybe this is why Reyna's being able to get these visions, who knows, but while Coulson is having this call with Maria Hill, Reyna has a vision that I did feel was a tad bit on the nose. When she started going off about the scepter causing all this destruction, and then talking about metal men tearing things apart, that's where I'm like, okay, I get it. I've seen the trailers. I know the movie's coming out. You don't have to lay it on that thick. And that's where the episode ends. And I'm a little worried that because that's where the episode cuts off, I feel like the only way to actually know what happens next is going to be to see the movie Age of Ultron. I'm really hoping that they don't actually make you have to see the movie to know what's going on, and then when you go see when next week comes around and we see the next episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you're not going to be able to know what's going on unless you've seen the movie. Because one of the things I did kind of enjoy about last year and how Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was able to tie in with Captain America the Winter Soldier was that you almost didn't really need to see Winter Soldier when you think about it. I mean, they did their best to try to explain that Hydra has been inside of S.H.I.E.L.D. all along, and they had their moments in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s very own episodes to be able to explain that. And you almost didn't need to see Captain America the Winter Soldier. I mean, you saw a helicarrier being taken out of the sky, and that was a direct clip from Winter Soldier. But you never felt like you needed to see the movie. Eventually, they explain things. And hopefully they do explain things eventually within the timeline of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But I'm scared that the only way to know what happens next, like right away next, is to see Age of Ultron. I mean, I'm going to see the movie regardless. This weekend, alright? Not even this weekend. This Thursday, I'm going to see it. But it would be a bummer for those who don't regularly go see movies. I mean, you'll be surprised by how many people are turned off to seeing movies in the theaters now. And I cannot blame them. The Dirty Half Dozen had our original members of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. going in SEAL Team 6000 to extract their friends from a Hydra compound. And it was done really well. I still think it was really weird that Simmons was making that quick turnaround. But besides that, it was a really well-made episode with plenty of juicy moments at the beginning of the episode, and then a really good reveal and a really good build-up to Age of Ultron that had an enormous amount of fan service moments that were done well and had me smiling for a good amount of time. And some really good dialogue in this episode. I mean, it wasn't the most cleverest of dialogue moments, but some really good one-liners that were quirky, but really good. I don't know, there was just some really good lines of dialogue in this episode. My favorite, Skye looking at Raina and going, I thought her power was to spin around really fast and collect gold rings. That was the best one. That was the best one by far. Or Coulson's, oh, spoiler alert. Just really great, Joss Whedon-esque moments throughout the episode. So for that, I give The Dirty Half Dozen a solid 8 out of 10. A really good build-up to Age of Ultron. But let's just hope that Age of Ultron isn't completely necessary to get what's going on within not just the S.H.I.E.L.D. universe, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole. So let me know what you guys thought of this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I'll see you guys next week with my review of the episode tailing Age of Ultron. And seeing how that's going to play out is going to be quite a treat. I'll see you guys then.